Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Over It podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Suzanne Kohlberg, joined today by Kristan Kershaw. Has another name if you're watching the video. And today,
little Easter egg there.
you got to drop the hints, the breadcrumbs, or was it Hansel and Gretel style? Today we are talking about getting unstuck. Especially this time of the year around Easter time, many of us can feel like the New Year energy has, subsided, and it's just that kind of, general feeling of blarness. What do you reckon, Kristan?
Oh, totally. Because you've done the Christmas New Year thing, whatever that looks like in your world. For us in Australia, getting back to school, for everybody, getting back into whatever the routine of the new year is, and for many, I know, not just myself, it's been a really full-on start to the year already. And so it's already like, how are we where we are in March? Again, recording this during March 2023. It's just, but how often do you hear people say that now too? So no matter when you're listening to this, I think it really applies. So everybody's lives are on the go all the time, no matter what you do, no matter what your family, your lifestyle, your work, your commitments at home, doesn't matter. I think everyone's feeling quite overwhelmed with a lot going on.
Overwhelmed. That can be our theme today for the Over It podcast. We're going to delve into overwhelm. And yep. I think overwhelm, a feeling to touch on, because you can feel overwhelmed when you have too much to do. Like, I've got to do this and this and this, but you can also feel overwhelmed when you don't have enough to do, because, it's a fascinating emotion. And also, too, when you think about it, there's overwhelmed, there's underwhelmed, like, when you've been waiting for a TV show and it's kind of not that great. Do we ever have just whelmed?
I don't know. That's a very good question. Is there such a thing?
You're going to Google, aren't you? Because it's like, we can be overwhelmed and we can be underwhelmed. What's whelmed even mean? Let us know. Comment, send us a message if you have a definition of whelmed. I'd love to know. But anyway.
I have one.
Oh, you've got one.
I was very quick on that one. Someone said, why do people say over and underwhelmed, but never just whelmed? So the whelm, to submerge or engulf, or to overcome utterly. Overwhelm, whelmed by misfortune. So really, it's a real play on the English language, to be honest. It's one of those words.
Yeah, but it's fascinating too, like that we have over and under, but we don't actually have the thing, which leads to feeling of stuckness, which leads to the topic for today, because we're only ever one decision away from becoming unstuck. And I think, whenever I feel, whichever whelmed it is, overwhelmed, underwhelmed, stuck, it's like, I got myself into this so I can get myself out of this. It's such a freeing way of being. Otherwise, it's dependent on other people. Like, if the kids get to bed on time, or if their homework is done, or if all these things fall into place, then I can be okay. And it's like, I can be okay regardless. Irregardless, whichever. We're having a very play on the English language today, but have you got an example? Have you got something where you're feeling stuck, or you felt stuck, that you want to workshop? Let's go.
Oh, that's a juicy one. Which one would I choose? So, full disclosure, people who think that I've perfectly got everything together, at any given point in time, I'm managing 2 businesses, 3 kids, household, pets. I would really like to, I've noticed that I've stopped walking my dogs. Now, you know the reason why, but that means I'm not walking at all. So, full disclosure, I have a dog who has become more and more reactive over time. So she doesn't, reactive meaning sometimes people think they're going to attack. She doesn't attack anyone. She barks, and she's got a really shrill bark, which is scary to other people. That's how she talks. So when she's with other dogs that she does nothing of harm to, she barks and she rounds them up because she's a working dog. So that's what she's learned. So I've taken her to training, and we've worked so much. It was only a 6-week course, but she came so far in that time. But what was happening before that is I would walk both dogs, and they're both super energetic dogs. And I can do a 5-kilometer walk and they barely knock any of that energy off, especially this one. The other dog, she's high energy to begin with. And she's a sprint runner, not an endurance dog. So she can burn the energy fast and quick. And then she'll get a bit more tired towards the end, but she'll be like, can we go again? Whereas Muffin, the one that's particularly challenging, she'll just go and go. And I'm like, oh, have I not worn you out yet? Anyway, but what was happening is they were pulling me, and I was getting to a point where my arms and shoulders were sore from being pulled no matter what I did. And I've had dogs for a long time. I've used many different obedience techniques and all this, but this poor dog has had a lot of fear driven into her, which is something that many humans also experience, right? You won't go somewhere, you won't do anything because you're just so locked in fear. And this dog, I think, has been potentially, we got her when we estimate she was about 2. And she was just so nervous. She spent the first 2 weeks of the time with us hiding behind in a room away from anybody else. She would come out to eat. We would have to carry her downstairs because she was so scared downstairs, because I don't think she'd ever seen them in her life. Anyway, all that said and done, I got to a point where I was building resentment that I was being pulled at, and that I used to go to the park and enjoy, the dogs would run around, or one dog when we only had one. And it was an enjoyable experience, and I got more and more resentful. And I love the exercise. And interestingly, at the end of the course, I could walk both, which I wasn't expecting. This is a long-term thing that we've got to chip away at with this poor thing. She's so petrified. We used a technique to get them to learn to touch something on their nose or on their body, and she ran the other way. So we've had to very gently get her used to being touched and handled in different ways, because she just expects that everyone's going to hurt her, even though we've never done it. So I walked them, and I had a win. They both walked and they didn't pull, and she's okay by herself now for the most part, and I've got techniques to use. And then I did another one, and they were a bit more pulley, and I think that I'm getting that apprehension coming back that, oh boy, we're going back down that path where they both pull, and I don't want to go there. But I've noticed that I'm stuck on, I could just put my shoes on and just leave the dogs. They'll cope with me walking by myself, but why am I not?
Oh, I love this. This is a juicy one. So why are you not?
I honestly, this has been something playing in my mind for a little while. I think so anyone who knows me, I'd never stop. I'm either working or moving. I don't sit a lot, and I know that I need to get up and move because I sit a lot for work. So I do yoga a couple of times per week, and I'm doing a group training thing once a week. So I'm moving, but I've noticed that I'm better in the group training, shockingly, especially when I walk during the week. So again, consciously, I know I'm better for it. But I don't know, in the morning, like today, I was up before 6 a.m. I had time before my first commitment where I could have gone even a 20-minute walk, but I probably could have done longer. And something's changed within I don't know if it's because I'm feeling we've got to honor our bodies, right? Suze and I are not here to go, I need to push through if there's a resistance there. Because if I'm genuinely tired, or, my body is run down, going and pushing through that and doing exercise anyway is not helpful. But it doesn't feel like that. There's some subconscious-y type thing why I'm not just putting the shoes on. I don't know if it's because the dogs get hyper and absolutely ridiculously excited if I put shoes on. I have Birkenstocks, I can put open-toed shoes on. Okay, whatever. But if I put sneakers on, which is what I would walk in.
I think this is such a great topic. And for the listeners, for anyone listening, for yourself, where are you stuck? If you want to share it with us, let us know. But if not, just for the sake of this little process, this little activity. And what is the difference for you between resistance that, we can workshop, like I'm going to do with Kristan now, or actually listening to your body? And that would be a topic for another episode. But just so you know, as Kristan has framed, we're not about pushing through that. Like right now, at the time of recording this, I have a hamstring injury. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's very painful. And Kristan and I were talking about that before we recorded. And it's frustrating for me because my body's wanting to move but is physically unable. So there's that. I'm not saying push through that, but there's a difference between, okay, I've identified, you said you had 20 minutes at least, maybe more.
I actually probably am now. Really, I could have gotten a good walk in.
So, okay, so part of it is, well, if I get the shoes, the dogs are going to get excited and all this sort of thing. So people pleasing, for anyone listening, doesn't just apply to people. It also applies to pets and, but I suppose if you ask the dogs, they probably think they're people. But, beyond the aspect of them, because you could be like, okay, they're going to get excited and they might be a little bit disappointed, but, they'll get over it. Or you'll be out of earshot. So it will be hubby and the kids or neighbors, sorry, neighbors, who have to listen. So what beyond that? Like, what was going through your head at the time where you're like, I could get my shoes on, I've got a little bit of a window, but I won't, beyond the dogs?
It was like the normal impulse that I got into the routine of last year of, it's like the natural progression. Okay, shoes on and I'm out the door.
Mm-hmm.
There was no inner drive to do that. Again, I don't know why, but it just it didn't feel like that was where I was flowing. So I kind of went, the easier option right now is to put some washing away. There was a procrastination factor of, there was just not the desire that there has been historically to do it.
And this is so good, not the awareness, because we can't change what we don't acknowledge. So sometimes it's like, okay, there wasn't the desire. So imagine if you had desire, like in the past, you're like, I'm going to send a voice note, or I'm going to listen to a podcast. Shout out, if you listen to yourself, that might be a bit weird. But like if you had something that was motivating. So say, for example, I get up every morning. I don't know if I've talked about my penny walks on the podcast before, on this
maybe
podcast.
Give everyone a bit of a, what's a penny walk?
I was going to say, nothing to do with the creepy clown in the drain, people. So just breathe. Many of us are familiar with the term like habit stacking. So putting a habit on top of something that you already do. Where I differentiate this is that we have a goal. So in terms of exercise, a lot of people will have, 30 to 45 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week. And then we set ourselves a inadvertent pass or fail, because it's like, well, I can't do 45 minutes, so I just won't go. And then it's like, I'm going to do it 3 times. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. You get to Friday and you're like, well, shit, does 3 times today count? Hence the idea of the penny. So a penny is like equivalent of 1 cent, which we don't even have in Australian currency. But anyway, 5-cent walk just doesn't have the same ring to it. But it's something so small that you can't not do it. It is not the goal. It's just the ease of entry. So when it comes to going to bed at night, if you're like, oh, and the things that run through your head when you're stuck, hence the theme of this episode, I didn't go for a walk. Oh, I didn't do my meditation. Oh, I didn't return that phone call. Oh, I didn't pay that bill. And then you're wondering why you can't get to sleep because your brain's wired. It's like too wired to sleep, but too tired to function.
Yep. It's a thing.
So the idea of the penny is an action that is so small that you can't not do it. And then you go to bed with that feeling of accomplishment. And people often laugh because they're like, well, how could I feel accomplished? But it's like, it's not the goal. Once you've done the penny, you can keep going. So for me, my movement one, because I have a word allergy to the term exercise, is to walk to my mailbox. And people are like, oh, wow, you must have a really long driveway. I haven't counted it, but I guess it'd be no more than 12 steps. I've got to put my shoes on, though, my sneakers, because if I go out barefoot, there's no intention to keep going. So it's the intention behind the action. So, bra on, shoes on, out the door, and then earbuds in. And once I get to the end of the driveway, I tend to keep going. Then, it becomes however long it becomes. And some days it is 5 minutes and some days it's an hour and varies in between. How did we get onto the penny walk subject? Oh, we were talking. So when I wake up in the morning, I used to check my social media, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this. I wake up and I was like, oh, what's happened? What are my notifications? Where's my email? All this sort of stuff. I could waste an hour on that shit, or more. And then, oh my gosh, got to get the lunch ready, got to get the kids off to school. And I felt my days were starting really frenzied. And then I never had any time for me. So with the introduction of the penny, it's kind of like part of it was, well, once I've done the walk, then I can check my social media. It was like kind of like a reward. it worked for a while, but then I was like, this is not really that enticing. Like, I didn't actually get that excited, nor do I miss checking my social media in the morning. So it's like, if your alarm goes off or it's time to wake up, especially as in Australia, we're coming into the cooler months now. If it's cold, and we had our first fog here the other day, if it's cold and foggy, are you going to want to get out of bed? No, you're going to want to hit snooze and get your extra 5 or 10 minutes and stay where it's warm. So what does motivate you? And for every person, this will be different. For me, hot shower. Like, yes, I could have a shower anyway, but there's that feeling after I get back and you have that nice awareness in your muscles, hot shower, feeling clean. I find that really, really motivating. And I also am currently doing these Conqueror challenges, which is why I'm annoyed when I'm grounded with my hamstring because I can't walk much. But, clocking the kilometers towards that. So for you, Kristan, like what I don't like the term motivates because I think motivation's a load of shit, but what, inspires you or, makes you think, I feel a sense of achievement or accomplishment about that walk?
I think just getting out and fresh air. Again, what you said about not being on social media or whatever, there was a degree to which this morning I've been working on not, and so I'll try and have, like, I have a book here that I've talked about, I think, in other
yes,
podcasts.
You have spoken about that. Yes.
It's an awesome book. And so I'm trying to chip away at it because most of the time I read it at night. And my challenge is, even if it's 9 o'clock at night, I'm getting noddy, and often it's not 9 o'clock at night. So I'm really noddy and I don't get very many pages at a time done. And this is on an interlibrary loan. So later this month, I've got 10 days actually, looking at the date. I have 10 days to get this book read and returned to the library. So anyway, it's the motivation is, I know that in past times when I've gone and done the walk, I feel so much better for it. But interestingly, as I'm describing that, the feeling that comes to me is, and often it's not relaxing when I get back. It's go straight onto a call, go straight into something else. So there could be just as much the disincentive of, right, hand the dogs back to somebody else to get their harnesses off or whatever they've been wearing, and straight on to the next thing. So I'm wondering whether that's compounding the lack of desire to go, because it's stacking more in my day. I'm all for habit stacking, like you were just talking about. But in my case, my days end up so stacked that by the end of them, I've done 7. Last week, I did 7 meetings in one day, and I intentionally put gaps, yes, but they were not long. I did eat and go to the toilet, but there was not a whole lot of anything else between. So heavy brain work from 7 or 8 a.m. until 4 or 5 in the afternoon, sometimes different, but same, different. My days are jam-packed. So I'm wondering whether stacking a bit more of that first thing in the morning is actually contributing.
Yes, and that's another thing that I haven't spoken about, I think, at all. So we can compound, the pennies and stack, our good habits, but we can also compound our bad habits. And if you're already feeling a little bit frazzled or a little bit hustly or a little bit like I come back and I'm behind and the walk is going to add to that, then it's little wonder subconsciously it's like, I'm out. And then what many people do, I know many of the clients and a few people in this current round of Why Wait that's just finishing up, it's like, I'm just so done by the end of the day. I don't want to listen to a module or come to a coaching call or do anything for myself, meal prep, stretch. I just want to zone out and turn off. And I think it's because we, to be honest, we often have really unrealistic standards for ourselves when it comes time to make a change. And you and I have spoken about this a lot, but there's a difference between, what is ideal, like the ideal day, which we've spoke about, which I think is BS, but, what is good enough versus what is unrealistic and perfect that's never going to happen. And so many of us end up in this black or white thinking of, unless I can do that, then I'll do nothing. And then we end up compounding I dislike the term bad habits, but, so if you were like to feel that you got back, because you said when you got back from the walk, your body feels good. How do you sleep when you walk more often?
Well, this is the other interesting thing. When I walk, say on a Thursday, I used to walk and I'd start the day with that. And then my husband gets our youngest sorted for school, so I don't have to do anything there. I can walk in, go here the dogs are, and they can sort them out and feed them, whatever. Because we don't like feeding them as soon as they've come back from exercise, shockingly, because who wants to just scoff food down the second that you stop moving? Not most humans or dogs.
Water is what I want.
Water and rest. And so, but then I do training at 6 o'clock at night on those days. And I had noticed that training was getting harder and I was possibly overdoing it for where my body was able to do some of these things. And I had a couple of times where I was bordering on injuries and very sorer than I should be type thing, where I'm like, okay, I've overstepped an invisible boundary to me on what my body could do, overdone it. Yeah, okay. But then I went for the walk and still had the training and respected a little bit more of the boundary on maybe not, just because they set this many repetitions doesn't mean you have to push through that. You don't want to go to a point where you're not challenging yourself and going, yep, I'm done. And you're actually not really puffing, panting, or challenging yourself at all. But just because she says do 20 repetitions, then 18, then 16 in the different rounds or whatever, if you can't do 16, do 12 or whatever. And so the trainer I've got is very good in that regard. And I slept so much better that night. And generally when I do some sort of exercise, I sleep better that night. But especially I've noticed in combination, if I do walking and then yoga, or walking and then the training at other ends of the day, I am not getting injured or feeling like I've overdone it. My body's more primed, would you say? And then I sleep so much better after training. It's a deeper sleep.
I love this. I really want to double back for the listeners when you said my body is more primed, because I think what tends to happen is when we don't get the frequency that we desire, it's like, I'd like to walk daily, or I'd like to walk 3 to 5 days a week. What we can do is when we do it, we go really intense. And that is what often leads to injury.
Yeah.
And, we have this like mental determination that overpowers our body's genuine needs. And we're like, it'll be fine, pull the muscle. Ask me how I know. So it's kind of like the frequency. And I think when we're stuck in this perfect black and white thinking, and because we can't do it perfectly, we don't do it at all. It's this perfect storm for us to do this all or nothing and then say that we can't be trusted and we can't, and then when we end up stuck. Whereas if you're like, okay, this morning I have 20 minutes or I have 5 minutes, and that's where we've got to retrain our brain, because we've been conditioned to think 45 minutes or it's nothing, or get your heart rate up or it's nothing, or burn so many calories or it's nothing. But it's that frequency rather than the intensity that the body gets used to, that the nervous system calms down, like leading back to what you were talking about with your dogs earlier, and also us as humans. And then your anxiety, like if they're starting to do, and I think this leads into our own anxiety, because we're like, I'm falling back into bad habits. I thought this time would be different, but it isn't. And then we are like foreseeing our own doom. So the biggest part of my work, and for some people it takes multiple rounds, and some, but not many, get it on the first round. The penny isn't some nondescript thing that you ignore. The penny is everything, because the idea of the penny is the frequency that you do it daily. And some days you have 5 minutes, or your body has 5 minutes, and some days you have longer, but it's that consistency to show up for yourself, regardless of what's going on, that leads to the changes that we truly desire. That this is good enough. But, I wrote a newsletter yesterday, and what did I say? I have to find the title. I was really proud of it. And now, but it was the myth of when I get there, I'm gonna have to go and find it now, because I was really proud of myself. It's so funny. It was really cool, but I've forgotten what it was. The road to success is always under construction, because we're kind of like, if then. So if I lose the 5 kilos, if I get fully booked with my clients, if I save the dollars, if I find the thing, then I will be happy or whatever. And we have this myth of arrival, that when we get there, it's going to be different than here. But the road to success is like, there's always going to be a new obstacle, but it's not to freak out. It's just to like flow around and work with it and realize that, you know, there is more out there. But I think so many of us keep ourselves stuck because we kind of realize that when we get there, it's not going to really be any different than here in terms of how we think and feel most of the time.
For sure. Yeah. And it's interesting because not until you start to do work in a different way from how you've always done it, do you start to see the shift, right? It's the whole keep doing things the same way that you know and expect a different outcome. It's not going to be. But if you have dug into an area of your life and you found, you know, progress in that area, maybe now you're like with this. I've had a lot of different phases of exercise in my life, and I don't consider walking the dogs exercise like a class or whatever, but it is. I don't dawdle, I don't walk slowly. And if they are in let's go mode, it's heavy. It's actually, I did my first group training in December last year, and I just did it easily. And it's right when the dogs have been really pulley for months beforehand. And I've realized recently how much not walking means I don't have the same musculature support. And so it's harder for me to do the same things that I did then in the same repetitions and everything because of it. But anyway, that mind clearing, that fresh air, that whatever, I've been here and done that. And yet I'm still benefiting from this coaching. And I've noticed that with the work that you do in Why Wait. We may have worked on areas before, but you start shining light on it in a different way and approaching things in a different way. And it gives you an opportunity to, sometimes we address things, but we haven't actually addressed what's really beneath it. And you get that opportunity to look at it from another perspective. Because I hadn't factored in I've been thinking about the fact that the dog's pulling is a apprehension because that's been playing on me for a while. But I haven't factored in that it could be that I really don't want to add to my stress load because my work days are long, and if it's another stress. And of interest now is Thursdays used to be I could go do the dogs, do the meeting that I have immediately after walking the dogs and so forth. And it would finish at 3 o'clock in the afternoon-ish, 3 or 4. And I would finish doing work at my desk, but meetings and whatever else would be done by 3, definitely. Well, now I do that, I finish bits and pieces, then I go and run in to get raw milk from town near me. Then I come back and either go straight to training with the milk with ice packs or home and then to training. And then I don't get home till 7 o'clock at night. So is it any wonder that my brain is going, yeah, maybe you don't want to do that walk? Like I'd really not factored in that aspect of it. Part of what I might need is some extra breaks during the day, so it's not quite such a long day.
And then following through on those breaks, because sometimes for many of us, our breaks are the first things to go. If a client session goes over time, or if someone needs something, at the time of recording this today, I was in the break before this at the supermarket doing the midweek top up, that you do. And it was like, this was the downtime. And then what is the effect of that? So it's kind of like, because we are human beings, not human doings. And it's amazing how much we tend to over commit or over accommodate or I can't think of the word, but, shove in all these extra things. Kristan's like, not me at all.
No.
But it's kind of looking, where do I need these extra breaks? Because we can't pour from an empty cup, but also we need to empty a cup out before we can fill it again. And sometimes there's dregs in there.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure.
So where would you look at, looking at I know you're a planner, much more organized than I am, would it be a longer break? Is there something that you could delegate or ditch or put to a different time in the week? Like you and I've had the big rocks discussion before. I love it when people say fit the big rocks. Like I get that, but some of us just have more big rocks than we have container.
That would capture Kristan's life quite successfully, as there are a lot of big rocks. And it's remarkable how you can squish the medium rocks in when you don't think they can be squished, and the little ones kind of, but then that's when you leave yourself open to missing things too, because, you know, which is a huge frustration for me. The perfectionist in me, I would call myself a recovering perfectionist. I actually don't sit too much in the space of having expectations on myself to get everything done perfectly. I had to learn to let that one go to a large degree in order to be where I am now, because you just can't nail it every single time. I've got better skills, so there's things that I do naturally at a very high standard, which meets my needs, and others would look at that I've done them perfectly. But for me, I haven't done it exactly how I'd like, but I'm okay with that. Once upon a time, I wasn't. But definitely, yeah, I think it probably is having a look at, and you know how much I have my weekly schedule kind of pretty well laid out.
I've seen it. It's very pretty, people.
And this is how you run two international businesses, or two businesses that have international clients, and do a podcast and have a family and try and have a life outside of it.
But the thing is, I'm just going to interject because, you know, that's what I do. Sometimes our perfectionist comes up sneaky in that a shadow of the perfectionist can be overcommitting. So it's like still taking on too many things. So it's like, it might not be that they have to be perfect, but also, you know, do I have to do them now? And I think, you know, for both of us, it's something to look at. You know, overcommitting is a sideways way that the perfectionist kind of, you know, sneaks in without, I'm not perfectionist, I just got too many things to do.
Absolutely. And not delegating them and all that. Again, I've gotten a lot better at delegating, but I've also gotten a lot better at expanding businesses and whatever. And it's remarkable how things rush in, you know, like when you lift up, you're in a swimming pool and you lift something up and everything rushes out, but the water rushes into, I may fill the gaps quite effectively.
So this is where you're looking at your walking and like what you made the gaps for, which is for you, and reclaiming those. And
exactly,
you can totally do this.
So I'm thinking, and interestingly, as we've been thinking about this, I made choices on what days I do things and all that sort of stuff. And a bit of a spanner that got thrown in the works was my youngest school timetable type thing. My youngest daughter, should I say, her school timetable got switched this year, which has never happened in many years of having my kids in primary school. Music day was always on a Tuesday morning. They threw me for a bit of a unexpected turn there. So now it's on Mondays. Ooh. When I used to walk on a Monday. So I have to have her at school at 8 a.m. on a Monday, which means going for a walk at 7 a.m. till 8 a.m. and then finishing getting her ready and getting her to school. Can't happen then. But interestingly, then on a Tuesday, the same thing. I don't have to get her to school by 8 a.m. and there's not the same time pressure there, but I do have a meeting at 8 a.m. still. So we've, you know, there's a few, and I think that's partly compounded where my brain has gone, because I'm like, can't mishmash all the different.
I see that meme with all the calculations and the person and they
all the numbers around their head. Yep.
Yes.
So I'm thinking that maybe it's a matter of, hang on, and just for extra fun, on a Wednesday, I normally would just get her to school at normal starting time, but now she has netball training at 8 a.m. So I have webinars or Q&As or whatever until 7:30 most weeks, and then have half an hour to go up to her, make sure she's ready, which she's really good at doing that by herself, and then get her to school for 8 o'clock. What's to stop me from going for a walk after I drop her off at school? And then there is no rush.
There it is. So sometimes it's like when an obstacle comes up, reminding ourselves to be like water, is in we can go around it, rather than turning it on ourselves and like, I can't get myself together, or getting this self-blame game, because, you know, obstacles happen. And I think sometimes there are our preferred times. Like I like to walk as soon as I wake up. That's my preferred time. But on Tuesdays, I have an early commitment as well. So it's like I do the commitment, then I go for the walk. So it still happens. It just doesn't happen, you know, exactly in the way, because otherwise what do? We just add more work in. And it's like, no. Not only can you not pour from an empty cup, but you can't pour from a cup full of stuff that, needs to be ditched out. And I think for a lot of us, the walking, the movement, that self-time is our time to empty out mentally and emotionally a lot of stuff that isn't serving.
Yeah, for sure. And that's another aspect to it all. I'm not getting my podcast time, because that's when I listen to podcasts. I listen to audiobooks at different times, like when I'm cooking or whatever, maybe when I have a shower. But generally podcast time is walking time, and that's not been happening. So then that's another bit of my life which doesn't feel like it's getting ticked off.
I love it. So does that feel complete? Like, you're feeling unstuck?
Well, it's been in the periphery, and there's been a few times where I've gone, I could just walk now, but now I can't ignore it anymore. But the other thing that just came to mind while you're talking is once I lock the dogs out to go out to take my daughter to school, I can put my shoes on then, and they can't do anything about it. Hey, they're not going to run around silly because they're not going to see. So then I can save that craziness, and I could come back and go for a walk by myself if I don't want to have the loony dogs pulling, or I can sneak inside, get the stuff that I need for them, and then we're on our way. And there's again, it's getting rid of one of those barriers.
Exactly. I think, sometimes it's just a space to pause and reconsider and test. So I'll check back in with you next week and see how it's going. And accountability, because, we all like Alf. For those of you who are young, you might not remember Alf, but he was like, don't let me out. So if someone asks me to check in with them, I'm like Alf. I will follow up. Awesome. So if you would like some help getting unstuck, this is part of the work that I do in my signature program, Why Wait? The next round will be kicking off in April, mid-April. All the dates are always on the website. So depending on when you listen to this, if it's not as it first releases, I really encourage you to sign up, to come along, and to just, it's a matter of getting real. Like, Why Wait isn't a prescription, because everybody has different goals. The themes, the feelings, the thoughts, the beliefs, the underlying stuff is often very similar, but the way that it plays out, like in this current round, we have somebody, launching a business who's been in pre-launch for I don't know how long. We have somebody who's been wanting and starting to do some stretches. You know how you go to the physio and they give you the stretches and you nod along and go, and then you don't do them and go and lie, and they know that you're lying, and you know that they're lying, and you just don't know why you just keep paying them.
This sounds like way too much experience talking, Suze.
Oh, not me. Never. No, I'm not speaking from personal experience in any way, shape, or form. Getting that project done, the book written, the blog started, because being stuck, we're only ever one decision away from being stuck, and being in a community of people where you can share without judgment, without shame, without being saying, here you go, here's some blueprint, just go follow this, because that compounds. Like when you were speaking about, I'm feeling compounding, frustration or whatever, you don't want to add something else onto an already overloaded, already stressed, already activated nervous system, because then it's just like, well, I can't go to Why Wait because I haven't done what I said I'd do. I'm actually just as excited when people don't do the stuff as when they do. And people always give me weird looks when I say that, because then we can find out why.
Yeah.
There's nothing more unuseful than another person you can't talk to or you have to avoid because, I didn't do the stretches that they told me to do. Like, imagine if you went to the physio and they're like, okay, so what happened? We did this in Why Wait. I think it was last round. Someone had these stretches and I'm like, so why don't you do them? And she's like, well, the room that I go into to do the stretches is cluttered. So it was like, it's not the stretches at all. It's the cluttered. She's like, yes. I'm like, so could you find somewhere else to do them? No, it has to be in this space. So what's it going to take to declutter the room? And that's what we did that round. And now she does her stretches. So having someone because none of us are stupid or lazy or whatever. And we don't need that to be told like a child or scolded. It's kind of like, why don't you do the thing? I'm already feeling overwhelmed and this is just another thing I have to add to my plate. Well, that's little wonder you don't want to do it then.
Shocking. I'm sure nobody can resonate with anything that I've talked about at all today. It doesn't have to be exercise. It could be anything.
It could be anything. The people pleaser thing. I don't want to leave my kids, or I feel like a bad mum, whether it be fur babies who want to go for a walk with you, or human babies who are like, but mum, look at my dance or my drawing or whatever it is. I'm not saying don't look at your kids' dances and drawings and things, but when you do that from a place of having filled your own cup and taking care of your needs first, it all stems for me from a couple of years ago. I can't remember when. My son, Casimir, looked up at me one day when my phone dinged and I picked it up, and he said, "You love your phone more than me." And I remember I was floored in that moment. And I was like, I can see why he'd think that, because I was attached to every ding and ping and whatever. And that's why now I don't have email on my phone, and I don't have apps. And so I've got podcast, like I listen to podcast audiobooks, things, but I don't respond to DMs and things, because notifications and that is someone else's intention. It's not mine. So I'm not saying you have to go as extreme as I do, and some people conduct their business that way, and you do you, but it's kind of like, are you attached to something that isn't in service to you, and is that keeping you stuck?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. So thank you so much. It's been fabulous. Thank you to everyone for listening. As always, we would love some reviews, some ratings. Let us know that you are picking up what we're putting down, and topic suggestions. We've had a couple come in actually, so I have to add them to our list. We are always open to topic suggestions. We might not be able to cover it exactly. It may not be in our expertise. There was one person who asked for something. I was like, that isn't what we kind of do here, but I actually know someone, so I recommended something else. But, where are you over it? What are you over it with? And if it's aligned, we will record something for you.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Until I'll see you on the next one. Bye.